The glare of fluorescent lights illuminated the shelves as she walked quietly through the aisles. To everyone else, she was just another face in the store. But to her, this moment was something more, an opportunity to observe the inner workings of her empire. What began as a routine visit soon spiraled into a nightmare that no wealth or power could shield her from. When you're black, even the owner's badge can't protect you from suspicion. On an overcast Tuesday, Angela Williams stepped through the automatic doors of the grocery store she owned. The scent of fresh produce and baked goods greeted her, but Angela's focus was elsewhere. She moved silently, observing the store's operation. Wearing a simple gray blazer, slacks, and flats, Angela looked more like a busy shopper than the CEO of the entire grocery chain. Before we get down to business, we want to hear your opinion. Write to us in the comments, what is your name and from which city are you watching us? Your support is very important to us. We will be grateful if you like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for participating with us in this important project. The decision to visit unannounced was deliberate. She wanted to see how the staff treated customers when they thought no one important was watching. But as Angela moved through the aisles, she couldn't shake the weight of the stares following her. Employees glanced at her, then whispered among themselves. One stock clerk dropped his gaze entirely when she walked by, while the cashier's eyes lingered a second too long. It wasn't admiration or recognition, it was suspicion. Angela had seen it before, and she had learned to ignore it. Or so she thought. Stopping by the produce section, she inspected the freshness of the fruits. 2 employees exchanged furtive looks before walking off hurriedly. Strange, Angela thought, but kept moving. She wasn't here to confront perceptions, she was here to ensure her business maintained its values. Yet as she turned the corner into the wine aisle, the stares felt heavier, almost suffocating. This wasn't mere curiosity, it was something much more pointed, and Angela couldn't help but feel it in her bones. Angela's footsteps echoed softly in the quiet wine aisle. Her eyes scanned the neatly arranged bottles, an array of reds, whites, and rare vintages she'd worked hard to curate for her stores. Finally, her gaze landed on a bottle of 1975 Bordeaux, a rare and valuable find. She reached out, gently lifting the bottle from its display to admire it. That was the moment everything changed. "Ma'am, put the bottle down," a sharp voice barked from behind her. Startled, Angela turned to see 2 security guards approaching quickly, their expressions hard and accusatory. She frowned in confusion. "Excuse me," she asked, still holding the bottle. "We've been watching you," one of them said, his hand resting on the walkie-talkie at his hip. "You need to come with us." Angela felt a mix of disbelief and anger rising. "Watching me? For what?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. The guards ignored her question. One of them stepped closer and grabbed the bottle from her hands, while the other gripped her arm. "We don't tolerate shoplifting here," the first guard said, his tone dripping with condescension. Angela's breath caught. "Shoplifting? Are you serious? I'm the owner of this store." The guards exchanged amused looks. "Yeah, and I'm the CEO of Apple," one sneered. Before she could say another word, her arms were wrenched behind her back, and she was roughly cuffed. The cold metal dug into her wrists as humiliation and rage burned through her. She struggled against their grip, trying to make them listen. "This is a mistake. Check your records. I own this store," she shouted. But her protests fell on deaf ears. Customers and employees stood frozen, some whispering, others staring openly at the scene. Angela's heart pounded as she was marched through the store like a criminal, her dignity stripped with every step. By the time the guards shoved her into the back office to wait for the police, Angela knew one thing: this was no misunderstanding. This was the cost of the assumptions tied to her skin. The small, sterile office reeked of stale coffee and sweat, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Angela sat in a metal chair, her wrists still cuffed behind her back. She felt every pair of eyes in the room bearing down on her as though she were an exhibit on display. Through the thin walls, she could hear the muffled sounds of the store, customers chatting, cash registers ringing, and, no doubt, whispers about the woman who tried to steal. 2 security guards stood by the door, their smug expressions unyielding. One leaned against the wall, arms crossed, while the other thumbed through paperwork as if to cement his authority. "You don't have any ID on you, huh?" one of them asked, his tone dripping with mockery. "Convenient." Angela inhaled deeply, trying to keep her composure. "I told you," she said, her voice even but strained. "I left my purse in my car because I wasn't planning on buying anything today. Call corporate. Check the registry. I'm Angela Williams, the CEO of this entire chain." The guard stifled a laugh, shaking his head. "Lady, do you know how many times we hear stuff like this? Just sit tight. The cops will sort it out." Moments later, 2 police officers entered the room, their expressions hard and indifferent. One began scribbling notes while the other leaned in close. "We've had reports of theft. Care to explain what you were doing with that wine bottle?" Angela stared at them, incredulous. "I wasn't stealing. I was inspecting a product in my store. You can confirm my identity with a quick call." "Let me guess," one officer said, barely suppressing an eye roll. "You don't have proof on you? That's not a good look." Her patience cracked. "This isn't about proof. This is about prejudice. Would you be asking these questions if I were a white woman in a business suit?" The officer paused for a moment, then narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, I suggest you stop making accusations and start cooperating." Angela bit her tongue, knowing any further argument would only escalate the situation. Instead, she clenched her fists behind her back, the cuffs cutting into her wrists. Time dragged on as they questioned her, asking the same condescending questions over and over. Each one felt like a blow to her dignity, a reminder of how little her success seemed to matter in the face of their assumptions. As the questioning continued, Angela glanced through the office window. Beyond the glass, employees and customers craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the suspect. Some whispered and pointed, while others looked on with thinly veiled satisfaction. She felt the weight of their stares, the humiliation clawing at her resolve. This wasn't just about her reputation anymore. This was about the message being sent to everyone watching: no matter how hard you work, how much you achieve, or how much power you hold, if your skin is black, you are guilty until proven innocent. The suffocating tension in the small police office lingered as Angela sat silently, her wrists aching from the cuffs. She had nothing left to say, the truth would have to speak for itself. Just as the officers prepared to escalate matters, the door burst open, and a man in a sharp suit strode in, his face a mask of controlled fury. It was Angela's attorney, carrying a thick folder brimming with documents. He slammed it onto the desk with authority, the sound breaking through the tense atmosphere. "I suggest you take a look at this before you make any more mistakes," he said, his voice steady but edged with steel. The officers exchanged nervous glances, hesitating for the first time since the ordeal began. One of them opened the folder, pulling out corporate registration papers, Angela's identification, and a signed lease agreement for the very building they were sitting in. A photograph of Angela at a ribbon-cutting ceremony was clipped to the top. "This is Angela Williams," the attorney continued, "the founder and CEO of this grocery chain. She owns this store, and your actions today amount to unlawful detainment and racial profiling. I suggest you unhand her immediately." The room fell silent except for the rustling of papers. The smug confidence of the guards melted into wide-eyed disbelief. One stammered, We didn't know." "You didn't bother to know," Angela cut in, her voice calm but ice cold. "You made assumptions based on nothing but my skin color." The officer holding the papers looked pale as he muttered an apology, fumbling with the key to unlock the cuffs. Angela stood, rubbing her sore wrists, her gaze steady and piercing. The guards and officers avoided her eyes, their earlier bravado replaced with shame. "Ms. Williams," one officer finally said, "we didn't mean." Angela cut him off. "You meant exactly what you did. The real question is whether you'll learn from it." Her attorney wasn't finished. We'll be filing a formal complaint against everyone involved in this incident, including these security guards and this precinct. Ms. Williams deserves more than an apology, she deserves accountability." The guards and officers shuffled uncomfortably, murmuring weak apologies. But Angela didn't linger to hear them. She walked out of the room with her head held high, her attorney by her side. Outside the precinct, the evening air felt heavy, but it carried a sense of resolution. Angela's mind raced with mixed emotions, relief that her innocence had been proven, anger at the injustice she endured, and a renewed determination to turn this humiliating ordeal into a battle cry for change. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about challenging a system that allowed prejudice to thrive unchecked. Angela stepped out of the precinct into the fading evening light, the weight of the experience pressing down on her. Reporters were already gathering outside, cameras flashing as questions were shouted in her direction. She paused for a moment, her attorney gesturing for her to move toward the waiting car. But Angela had made up her mind, this moment couldn't pass in silence. She walked to the nearest microphone, her expression composed but fierce. "What happened to me today is not an isolated incident," she began, her voice steady but resonating with emotion. "No amount of success or power can shield someone from the prejudice baked into this society. What happened wasn't just humiliating, it was a stark reminder of the barriers that still exist for people of color, even when they've built something from the ground up." The reporters scribbled furiously, the crowd swelling as her words echoed. "This isn't just about me," Angela continued. "It's about every black woman who has been doubted, underestimated, and wrongfully judged. It's about the millions of voices that go unheard. And let me be clear, I will not stay silent." The next morning, Angela's story dominated national headlines, sparking debates about racial profiling and systemic inequality. Social media lit up with hashtags supporting her, while others questioned how such an incident could happen to someone of her stature. The security guards were suspended pending an investigation, and Angela's lawyer moved forward with legal action against both them and the police department. Despite the public support, Angela felt the invisible scars the incident had left behind. Weeks later, she stood outside the same store, her presence no longer anonymous. Staff members apologized profusely, but Angela's gaze lingered on the customers watching her with a mix of curiosity and guilt. The store no longer felt like a part of her empire, it felt tainted, a reminder of how easily her identity could be dismissed. One evening, Angela returned to her office to find an envelope on her desk, unmarked except for her name in bold, black ink. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words chilling in their simplicity, "Next time, know your place." Angela stared at the note, her jaw tightening. It was a threat, a warning, but to her, it was also fuel. She pinned the note to the corkboard above her desk, a silent reminder of the fight that lay ahead. Angela wasn't deterred, she was emboldened. Her legacy had taken a hit, but it was far from over. Angela vowed to turn this moment of injustice into a catalyst for change, not just for herself, but for everyone facing the same invisible walls. She wasn't just fighting for her dignity, she was fighting for a future where no one would have to prove their worth in the face of prejudice. Her resolve hardened, Angela leaned back in her chair, the words on the note a stark contrast to the fire in her heart. "You wanted me to know my place," she thought. "I do, and it's at the top." Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video to show your support.